Testing, testing. Can anybody hear me? All right, I'm live. Hello, everybody. Hey there, MQ Madrid. Hola, ¿cómo estás? All right, let's get ready. So, if you guys didn't join me last live stream, I was having some microphone issues. I might still have some microphone issues. If anybody can hear me, can you type in the chat? But yeah, I'll just go ahead and get started here. Hey there, Icy Film. So last week I started this sculpt based on an illustration by Robert Crumb. He's one of my favorite artists, and so this is the image that I'm going to be making here. And so yeah, let's just keep going with it. Good to see everybody here. Oh, I'm so glad the mic is working. Last time I just couldn't figure it out. I'm actually not using my nice mic this time. I can't get it to work, so I'm just using my laptop's internal mic. What's weird is the mic, my nice mic works just fine in Skype or anything else. Just can't get it to work in OBS. Anyway, let's get going with this. So yeah, any questions you have, just shout it out in the chat. And yeah, I'm just gonna keep working on this. So we're gonna be using some features from Ryan's Tools, my plugin, which you can get on Gumroad. Just search for Ryan's Tools on ZBrush. And one of the nice features about this is allows you to cut out shapes from images. You can import images as planes, and then you can cut out shapes from them. So I just selected the shape of a wing there, for example, and then I'm just going to my plugin and hitting extract, pop that out. It just gives it some thickness with dynamic thickness, and I can use my plugin to just kind of dial in what thickness I want that to be. Start just extracting some objects from the reference imagery. I guess I'll just do multiple wings at once, make it a little easier and faster. Hey there, Icy Film. So you asked how I did that. It's a part of my plugin, Ryan's Tools. Let me type in here where you can get that. Just a little link in the chat. If you want to pick up my plugin. It comes in different versions. There is a free version, which is actually it's limited to an older version, not all the newest features. And then there's a $5 version, which is for hobbyists and students, which is the full version. And then there's a $20 version, which is for professionals. So yeah, now just going and re-sculpting some of those details that were just drawn on before with color, and just getting them sculpted in. And for this I'm using my crease brush. Which is part of the Pro version of my plugin. You can get some extras like some brushes and some of my custom alpha maps and textures. And you guys played around with AI art, like disco diffusion, and there's so many different ones right now. You can make artificial, intelligent artworks. Type in a phrase, and it pops out an image. Anybody played with that? I was playing with some of that stuff the other day, and it's pretty amazing what it can create. Like I've just been very impressed. It does kind of scare me, wondering, you know, what the role of artists is going to be in the future when computers can create art so easily and quickly. But for me, it always comes back to the fact that a computer can't enjoy the experience of making art. Only people can do that. And making art is an enjoyable experience. So even if a computer can do it, why not do it for yourself? Because it's fun. So I'm just going to split some of these fly wings off into separate pieces so I can work on them individually. Position them individually. You guys want to see my UI? Everybody freaks out for my UI. Let me see here if I can switch the video. Alright, so now that's showing my entire UI. And so I've actually worked across 3 different monitors. So my work is in one monitor, all my interface buttons down here are in a lower monitor, and then I've got my sidebar here in a side monitor. So I've got all the buttons I use on a regular basis, front and center, ready for me to use at any moment. Hey Tattoon, doing good, how are you? Using another feature of Ryan's tools here. Got my easy primitives, so I can just easily drop in any kind of primitive I want in the same location and size as the existing or currently selected subtool. So now I can make these little flies Great thing about Robert Crumb's artwork is he has kind of a loose style, and so it's really fun to just make these things without worrying too much of like, is it anatomically correct, proportionally correct? You just start having fun with it. You just start sculpting whatever way is enjoyable, rather than obsessing over, does it look totally realistic? So he's got these flies buzzing around his head, and they're just kind of cartoony and simple and slightly gross looking. So just trying to make them look just a little bit gross. I'm not going to put too much time into these since they're kind of background objects, but it'll just be kind of fun and nice to have some weird little flies in the background. Hey, AC Film, that's nice of you to say. Thanks a lot. So I'm just going to make a duplicate of that fly and just make a couple adjustments to it so they're not all identical. Hey Tatoon, so to answer your question, how to remesh a model which has unwrapped texture already and you don't want to lose that texture. So yeah, so basically what you want to do is make sure you've got your ZRemesh topology already done before you start getting into things like ZRemesh, because that's going to destroy your UVs, destroy your textures. So basically what you have to do at that point is re-project. So you want to get a duplicate of your subtool, ZRemesh it, lay out those UVs, and then project your detail, your subdivision levels, your polypaint, all of that with projection, and then that can capture all that detail, and then you can convert that polypaint back into a texture again. Tattoon? No, I'm not referring to Spotlight. Let me show you actually what I'm talking about. Under the, you got your tool palette, you got subtools, and under that there's project. And so you can just do project all, and just make sure geometry and color are both on, and that way when it projects, it'll pick up the other subtools, detail, and polypaint. Oops, oh, I don't want to do that. Oops, I accidentally told it to project. Oh no, you guys. ZBrush just crashed because I tried to hit escape to cancel the projection. And ZBrush didn't like that. Hey Arturo Martin, thanks. Yes, it is a custom interface. Oh, you guys, I hate it when ZBrush crashes. Now I just lost all that sweet insect sculpting. Well, I guess that's a reminder to save more often. All right, so when this happens, it always takes me about a tiny fraction of the time to recreate something that when I lose it in a crash. Let's go back through. I just practiced it, you know, it's like playing a video game. You just practiced. You just beat the level. It's so much easier to beat the level the second time, right? See if we can speed run this. Now that I've got my practice in. Actually, try to see if it quick saved it. No, I don't think I got it in a quick save. So there's a question, does ZBrush crash or error come often? Yeah, ZBrush crashes regularly, probably at least once a day for me. So yeah, I've always got to save regularly. Okay, to make these insect bodies, I'm going to use a different feature. It's actually also a feature from my plugin, Ryan's Tools. It's called Balloon Extract. And so you just mask off a shape that you want. And sometimes it works better than others. Sorry, this time it's not going to work great. So basically what it's supposed to do is just pop out anything you mask, but as like a smoother balloon-like shape. Yep, just making that with a mask and then extracting it out. Any tips for posing a completed character? So, yes, I do have some tips. While I'm going through the arduous task of recreating the work that I lost in that crash, I'll talk about posing a completed character. So, ZBrush is not great in a lot of ways for posing. It's hard to do a true rig, like with bones and joints and stuff in ZBrush. It's not really made for that. And so typically what I like to do is use a program that's better for posing. So there's a simple character creator that's free. It's called Make Human. And so I like Make Human. It's just a very quick, not a very detailed or high quality character creator, but you can make a character in there with a rig. And then you take that, export it as an FBX, and then you open it up in whatever software you like to do like posing or animation in. Could be Maya, could be Blender, could be Cinema 4D, 3ds Max, whatever. All of these will import an FBX, right? And so you take that FBX with the rig into it. It's just a simple human rig. It's just good for posing, really. I mean, it can also do some simple animation. But you take that rig with the pose, and then you pose it in Maya or whatever. So you get the pose looking good. And then once you're happy with the pose, export that, bring it into ZBrush, and then you can use ZBrush's tools to kind of match that pose. And I would start with the hips, right, with the center of gravity, and then move out from there, move down the legs, move up the torso, out the arms. And so that's really helpful to have a guide because it's much quicker and easier to get a nice pose with a rigged model in some other program. And then once you've got that, try to match, take it in ZBrush, try to match your pose with that. I do have one special feature that's actually inside of Brian's tools that's really helpful with that. So we've got this hand, for example, and so if you want to like pose one of these fingers, you can create a mask. Actually, let me go down a couple subdivision levels, right? So I've got this thing called shrink mask and grow mask. So we can like bring that mask back to the knuckle, right? And then I've got, I'll just blur it really quick once. Then I have a thing in Ryan's tools that centers the gizmo in the center of the joint. So you see right now it's like kind of on the skin, but I'll use my hotkey for that. Then it puts that gizmo right in the center of the joint, which makes it a lot easier now for posing that joint. I love these little flies. In the original artwork, they almost look like a chewed piece of gum. They're just like so grotesque. Like fat little larvae. So I got a question from Vivek Kumar. He asks how I can have a custom interface like mine. So yeah, the best way to do that is you just go to Preferences, Config, Enable Customize, and in this mode you can hold down Control. Let's see, I think it's Control and Alt. Yeah, hold down Control and Alt on any button, or you can drag from like here and drag it out to your interface, right? Or drag it off into the canvas to get rid of it, and then you can just save your save the UI or store it as the new configuration file. And when you're done, end customize mode. So yeah, that's just how I did it. And you know, I just over the years I would pay attention to which menus I was opening more and which buttons I was clicking on more. And if I noticed I was using a feature a lot, then I just put that in the into my custom menu. And then just built up my custom interface, you know, over the years. So now I've got every button that I use on a regular basis, you know, right there in front and center for me to look at. And yeah, it just makes it so much easier. You know, I hate going through, digging through menus, you know, every time I want to do something, you know, and so many features in ZBrush, you have to go through like 2, 3, 4 different menus in order to accomplish one task. And so I was just like, why waste all that time? You know, so now I've got everything I use, just click here, click here, click here, and I'm done. Or if I find that I'm clicking a lot of the same things in order, then I just make a macro or a script, right? Then I just, you know, some of the features in ZBrush, you want to like flip an object, but it has subdivision levels. You have to remove the subdivision levels, flip it, rebuild your subdivision levels, you know. And so I was like, why waste all that time? So I made some macros, some scripts, some plugins that just automate those processes. And now, so I'm selling them as my plugin. So in case you haven't seen, you guys can look up in the chat, and there's a link to it on Gumroad, where I sell my plugin. Makes life a lot easier. Oh yeah, hey, thanks Stolo. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, the Gizmo, custom Gizmo is part of the Pro package of Ryan's tools. So yeah, I designed it partially because it's just it doesn't cover up so much of what you're working on while you're working. All right, I'm going to save this before I get too far ahead of myself. Almost forgot to put those eyes back in after that crash. Okay, got those flies done. Now let's do, switching back now to just the artwork. So now let's do the smoke over his head. So this is pretty like 2D flat effect. So let's see how we might be able to mimic that in 3D. Let me just pull it from the original artwork. And let's try my balloon extract one more time. Maybe it'll work. Fingers crossed. Yeah, not too bad. Actually picked up the masking that I had on there before. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's what it does. It takes whatever mask you have and pops it off as a new sort of like balloony object. And what's cool about it is like if the mask is thicker, then it pops out wider. Or if the mask is thinner, it doesn't pop out as much. Of course, it still takes a little fine tuning. You know, it's not 100% perfect, but it definitely gives you something to start working with. We can even have that smoke kind of being wavy in this dimension as well. Kind of play with the structure of it. And kind of give it a zigzag effect. Like that smoke is kind of curling and zigzagging its way up into the air. So I got a question here from Icy Film asking if I make a creature with one object. I think you make the whole body with one object, or do you make several shapes together? It depends on what the character is. Typically, you know, if you're doing a cartoony character especially, and they're not wearing clothing, then it kind of makes sense to make it all one piece, because you see the whole body, you know, as one piece without any seams. But a lot of times you want to break it up where you've got natural seams. So for example, if you've got a character and they're wearing clothing and they're like high detail, then you want to break it up into different objects, and wherever you can hide those seams, right? So if you're wearing clothing and you're not going to see the torso, then you can cut it off, you know, in various places depending on where that is. You know, if the character's wearing a belt or a necklace sometimes, or like a hat, all kinds of different things offer opportunities to hide seams, right? So that's useful, because if your entire character is just one piece and you subdivide it a lot of times, then what can happen is that mesh becomes very dense and it can become difficult to work with. But if you break it up into several different pieces, then that mesh becomes easier to work with. So yeah, I recommend splitting when it makes sense, and of course that's something that comes with experience and time, you know, to know when it makes sense to split something and when it doesn't. But they're both. I definitely do some of both, where sometimes I will sculpt a character all in one piece, sometimes I'll break it up. So Joe Weiss asks if my UI is available for download. It is not. I actually used to offer it for download, but then I realized my UI is very specific to my monitor size and resolution, and when other people try to use it, it actually ends up not looking good on their monitors. It just doesn't fit right, buttons get cut off, or just weird things happen, and it was just too much of a hassle to try to like make something that works on everybody's screen. So no, my custom UI is not available for download anymore. But I suggest just making your own UI. You know, everybody works differently, and so, you know, the things that I have found that are useful for me might not necessarily be useful for anybody else, and vice versa. So I would say just put in some time making your own custom UI. You know, find the things that are useful for you, and turn that into your custom UI. All right, so I got a question from Link about where to learn ZBrush. I would recommend my own tutorials, which I have, you can get on LinkedIn Learning and on lynda.com. Just search my name. And I do the ZBrush Essential training course for them. I've got a cartoony character course. I've got a sculpting realistic portraits course, modeling shoes, several other things. So yeah, I think my courses are great. A lot of people like my courses. And what I try to focus on especially is what you're talking about when you say like there's a mountain of tools and it's difficult. So I try to guide the viewer through and just learn the the core fundamentals that you need to know and not get lost in tools that you're never going to use. And so then I just build on the core fundamentals. So once you know just the basics that everybody needs to know, then I build off that and show something else, and then something else and something else. And if you want to kind of jump right to a project, then you can do that as well. And just jump to one of my project courses, like cartoony characters or stuff like that. So yeah, hope that's helpful. I want to spend a little time with this smoke and just kind of see if I can find a way to help it look smokier. Just try to sculpt in a little bit of emphasis and stylization here. Yeah, so link, I could post a link. I don't know, I'd have to go look it up right now, see what the exact link is, but if you just go to linkedin.com or lynda.com, Lynda, and then just search for my name there, you'll find it for sure. And then do layers in Photoshop work like layers in ZBrush? Not quite, no. There is some similarities, but layers in ZBrush it's hard to describe the difference between the two. They're not quite exactly the same. They do have a similar concept, but if you've ever used, well, actually, I was going to say something about Mudbox, but I don't really use Mudbox that much. So, yeah, layers in ZBrush are their own thing. You can't really compare it. There's some similarities, but yeah, it's just kind of its own thing. Something else I'm curious to do here on this character. I want to see what happens if, so the original artwork in Robert Crumb's style, he's got this crosshatch style, and I'm just curious to see what happens if I try to sculpt in some crosshatch style. So I'm going to get my clay brush and let's give it an alpha that kind of has a multi-stroke effect on it. I'm just going to play with some of the settings here. Actually, let me switch back to my interface view so you can see what I'm doing. So I've got this alpha going. Just going to play with some of the settings here. See if I can get kind of a crosshatch effect. Kind of, but it's, oh, you know what, actually, let's go ahead dynamic subdivision turned on, and that can really slow your computer down if it's just trying to add that to a model with lots and lots of polygons. So ZBrush layers link, to answer your question, it's not really there to isolate sections. It's there if you want to add detail, like overlapping layers of detail, or change like the shape. It's kind of like storing morph targets in a way, and then you can turn them on and off. It's a little bit more like that. There's a question from Mosen. Hey Ryan, do you know any tutorial that we can learn retopology correctly and in principle? Not off the top of my head. Well, actually on lynda.com, I do have a Retopology in Maya course. My creature modeling course that uses ZBrush and Maya has a section on proper retopology. I also have a course on retopology in ZBrush, but it's more of like a quick and dirty retopology because ZBrush, the tools for doing really specific things with topology and geometry in ZBrush are a little weak. Sorry, Pixelogic. They're just weak. But yeah, just adding. So actually, this is a good time to talk about layers. I'm just going to undo this and put this detail on a layer so I can show you guys how that works. And then if I don't like this effect, it'll be really easy to turn it off with a layer. Undoing through all these strokes takes longer than it did to put the strokes on. Hey Dark King. Advanced courses on fiber mesh and dynamics. You know, it's funny, for those two features, courses are only so helpful. I feel like just jumping in and just figuring out how to make it work on your own is almost more useful. It's like a faster way to learn it. Because they're kind of so finicky that you have to just learn from experience how it all comes together. Okay, so under layers, I'm going to make a new layer. And I'll just rename this cross hatching. Okay, so we're recording into this new layer. And so I'm just going to put on some of this like signature crumb cross hatching, right? We'll just see what it looks like. It might look like crap. It might look good. Who knows? We're just testing it out. Let's see what happens. One of the interesting things about this cross-hatching style is it goes typically perpendicular to the flow of the anatomy. So it's pretty easy to just kind of figure out where it should go. I feel like it's definitely adding to the style of the character, so I kind of like it. I'm going to leave it in. As far as ZBrush core training videos for complete beginners, I don't know on that one, sorry. I want to say Pixelogic themselves has some first step videos for that. Okay, so with layers now, we can turn off record, and so we can turn on there's a little visibility, right? So we can turn that on and off. We can see what that looks like. And actually some of this is the thing that I kind of don't like about layers is anything that you do that you don't want to be on that layer, you're always going to record it. It is actually like Photoshop. It's just like Photoshop actually, because I'm always doing things in the wrong layer. If I'm drawing some detail or something, I forget to switch to the layer I need to switch to, and then I put detail on a different layer. So that's exactly what happens here too. Some of the smoothing out that I did is also included in this layer. So that you can see, what the effect is with that cross-hatching, what it is without, and then, you can decide later on if you want to keep it or not. You can also dial in the intensity of it, so maybe you like it but not quite so strong, or you could even go inverted with it, turn it backwards the other way. So I kind of like it. I'm going to leave it in. Oh, I didn't have symmetry turned on with that. Or actually I did. My symmetry is set to local symmetry, not world symmetry. That's why I didn't catch it. Or it kind of caught it, but in ways it wasn't supposed to. The thing I kind of don't like about layers now is like, now that I've turned on layers, everything I do has to be in a layer. So if I want to do sculpting that's not in this layer, I have to make a new layer for it. So there's a lot of finicky things that come with layers. It's not generally my favorite way to work. But I like that cross-hatching effect enough that I'm just going to keep it in there. So I'm just going to bake all and just lock in that effect. And then when I'm ready to move on, I'll just do it asymmetrically. That kind of effect is good to have asymmetrically anyway. You don't want to see that cross-hatching effect like obviously mirrored. A Robert Crumb mug. Yeah, I'm definitely going to build out the sort of like the interior of the head. So let's see if I can show that effect right now. So if I add the thickness with dynamic thickness, yeah, definitely be cool to put in make it like a mug on the inside to drink your coffee in the morning out of this. That'll wake you up, right? Yes, you can use layers for poly painting. It's a little janky too. You want to be careful with it. Sometimes it'll create unexpected results. It's fun to play around with, and it can sometimes work the way you want it to, but sometimes it'll just come back and bite you, and you'll just wonder why you got out of bed that day, because it can screw things up too. So I would do some experimentation and see if it's going to work in the way you want it to work first, before you like invest a lot of time doing poly paint with layers. Hey, thanks, Nat Palazzo. All right, I'm going to start working on his shirt. Shirts are interesting. There's all kinds of different ways to get started on them. So I never worked for digital tutors, just lynda.com and LinkedIn Learning, which then got bought by Microsoft. And Microsoft loves their money, so they stopped paying me to make new courses for them, because ZBrush is kind of a niche course, niche software, and they want to make money on the big software that gets a lot of views. So I haven't done anything for them in a while. All right, so the shirt is a little complicated. I mean, it's not so complicated, but you know, there's different things going on, and so I'm kind of thinking to myself, okay, should I start like poly modeling it with a cube? Should I take a sphere and do a more sculptural approach? Sometimes when I start like questioning which way to do something, it's better if it takes more than like 30 seconds to like think how I'm going to do it. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to start with a sphere. Just going to dive in and just do it, you know, the manual way rather than thinking too hard about it. So the shirt, well, I should kind of decide if I want to do the full shirt or just what you see in this picture. I might as well do the full shirt just in case. Just in case I want to see what that looks like. Oh, I didn't realize I was bringing my reference image into the monitor, but I didn't realize you guys couldn't see it because I wasn't showing the monitor. I was just showing ZBrush. So yeah, I think I'm going to do the full shirt, and then I can always cut it off later if I don't want to actually 3D print or render the full shirt. Because it's hard to change your mind, and like if you start out modeling it cut off and then you decide you want to have the full shirt in there, it can be a real pain to try to rebuild that out. So I'm just going to start with a full shirt. Which does mean I should probably start from a cube, honestly. So we'll get to see some Z modeler going on here. Hey, Nat Palazzo. Hey, that's really cool that you did my training video with the beaver playing the guitar. You know, after I made that course, I was like, wait a minute, why did I try to make him play a guitar? I should have made him play a banjo, which would have been even more like country jamboree, right? And then I could have maintained the round shape of the tree trunk instead of trying to make a guitar shape out of a round tree trunk. That was silly of me. All right, so so the structure for this shirt, let's get started here. First thing I want to give it symmetry. I'm just gonna weld that so I've got an edge down the center, and then let's cut some edge loops so we can pull out sleeves. Extrude some polys here. So I'm just getting a really crude start on a shirt. And now let's see, the shirt is like a button-up shirt, so I need to split in the front. So let's do this. Let's see, let's delete these polys so the neck can come out. And then I'll just insert a little edge up here. And I'll just delete these polys. This shirt is going to be so crude at first, but it'll come together, don't you worry. So I've got also a button for creasing open edges. That's part of Ryan Tools. Just makes it really easy to just have your open edges creased, which makes those open edges behave in subdivision like they do in Maya. Because otherwise, if you don't have those edges creased like this, then those edges shrink away when they're subdivided, which is not how subdivision works in Maya. So in order to keep that from being thrown off and you want it to look like Maya, I've got a special button for that. All right, let's extrude some edges. Let's see, edge loop. Let's do a perpendicular angle. Let's see how this works. See, maybe we'll do mesh border. It can be tricky sometimes to find just the right settings for this. Okay, cool, that works. And then you just want to delete some of these edges or some of these new polys that you create that aren't actually supposed to be part of this. Okay, so now I'm just going to keep pulling out this collar. So this is kind of like what I'm talking about, where ZBrush isn't the best for poly modeling. I mean, you can kind of get the job done, but in Maya this would be much faster, where you can create n-gons, you can do things more easily. It's easier to select your edges, because like when you've got a really long edge, it's actually hard to select right on that edge sometimes. There's some fine tuning definitely that needs to be done here in ZBrush to make it a solid poly modeler. Oh yeah, Nat. So yeah, it's a gizmo. It's a custom gizmo I made. It's part of my Ryan's Tools plugin. Okay, cool. So we got kind of the bare bones of a shirt going. I'm just gonna kind of tweak this to make it look even just a little bit artistically appealing. Yeah, hopefully Chrome is still alive. It'd be a shame if you weren't with us anymore. Can you save an OBJ in ZBrush Mini? Actually, I don't know. I've never used any of the ZBrushes that aren't the full version. Put in some more edge loops here. Give myself a little more detail to work with. So funny how such a low poly mesh looks so different between the subdivided and not subdivided mode. Okay, I think I'm going to leave the shirt where it is for right now. I think it's a good solid foundation, but I want to move on to some of the other stuff that's kind of just sticking out. Not done yet. Like the eyebrows. So since I made his head hair out of fiber mesh, I'm going to go ahead and make his eyebrows out of fiber mesh as well. Just kind of keep that consistency going. All right, almost there. Let's see. Probably don't need as many. We don't need it to be as thick. So bring the coverage down. Doesn't need to be as long. That's actually pretty close. Let's see. We don't need as many segments. Don't need any gravity. And we don't need as many fibers. Cool. All right, let's accept that. And now I just need to groom those hairs over so they're kind of groomed off to the side. And we want to keep it just a little bit messy, right? So can fiber mesh be exported? Question from Nat. Good question. Yes, you can export simply, I mean, it is geometry right now. ZBrush does think of it slightly different than most geometry because when it's fiber mesh, it knows to lock the base, the root of that fiber, so it doesn't move around. So if I go like to my move brush or whatever, it locks that in. But yeah, you can export this. It's just geometry, you know. And then there's also a way to export the curves that would generate this and export that to Maya or something. I don't really have a lot of experience doing that. That's not really part of my workflow, but you can do it. All right, I'm going to do a little bit more detailing on the hand. I really like that hatching effect that I did on the head, so I'm going to keep that going on the hand. Just try to dial in the effect on the brush here. Question from Joe Weiss about what kind of chair I'm sitting in over here. I'm actually standing at a standing desk. Skip the chairs, all the cool kids are standing. Let's see, I can't really see any fingernails in the original art, but I'm just going to kind of make up some fingernails that Crumb would be proud of. Good thing about sculpting cartoony characters like this, especially like drawn in Robert Crumb style, is you just don't have to put a lot of time and effort into making things precise and anatomically correct. You can just kind of go for what feels fun. The brush is not exactly clay tubes. It's my own custom brush. Just kind of using my custom clay brush, which is part of Ryan's tools, and then putting one of the default ZBrush alphas on it. Kind of gives it it's just like a spray of dots. But when you put it on a clay brush instead of spraying out, you get these dragged strokes. So, Nylia, question about if I use ZRemesher. Yeah, I do use ZRemesher. If I am going to do a character that's like going to be nicely animated, right? The ZBrush Retopology ZRemesher is not typically good enough for that. So I'll either do a ZRemesh and then take it into Maya and do a nice retopology on it, or I'll just do the retopology just from scratch in Maya. Yeah, ZBrush has extrude, like you mean extrude polygons and stuff, extrude edges. Yeah, you can do that with ZModeler, the ZModeler brush. There's also snapping, like snapping to vertices, V-snap. Yeah, you can do that too, kind of. I'm trying to remember. That's a little trickier to do in ZBrush. You can merge vertices with the ZModeler brush. I want to say snapping is not so easy. Yeah, stitch points. I forgot the name of it. Yeah, that's kind of like welding vertices. So yeah, just trying to create some of this cross-hatching detail and putting some variation in my stroke, just so it's not super regular. It's always nice to like have some of these strokes like a little softer, a little harder, a little different angles. Change up the spacing a little bit just so they're not exactly the same all the time. Make some longer, some shorter. This is getting into the relaxing part of ZBrush. When you've got a little, just a task to do, just put on some detail, and you just start doing it, and you just kind of forget about everything else. You get in the zone. There's actually a feature for this kind of work, and I haven't really used it very much. I should probably give it a try. Now that I'm already like mostly done with the hatching, might not make sense. The name of it is slipping my memory. Does anybody remember a tool? It's like something for clay, and it lets you sculpt with clay-like effects, but it only lets you change the surface by so much. Like once it sculpts like a certain amount of like height or depth, it doesn't push it any further, so you don't mess up your base mesh while you're putting on like clay type effects. Does anybody remember that? I can't remember where that was. Yeah, thick skin, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah, I haven't got these spammers invading my chat before. Just in case anybody didn't know, those are spammers. What they're offering isn't real. Don't click it. Don't click the link. Don't get a virus. As if anybody would fall for those nowadays. Ooh, I got 100 messages thanks to the spam bots. I reached my 100 message goal. Justin, you watching 80s streaming channels on YouTube or something? Yeah, I don't ever pay attention to the chats when I'm streaming on YouTube or streaming music from YouTube. On con, I say chatting. Yeah. Uh, yeah, I mean, I kind of get lost sometimes in the sculpting and don't really have anything to say. I just kind of like even forget the audience is here sometimes. But if you have any questions, anything you want to chat about, definitely put it in the chat. So there's a question from Icy Film. Is there a way to duplicate all subtool visible counts, but they still have all the separate visible counts left? I'm sorry, I don't understand what that question means. Is there a different way to phrase that? Oh yeah, there is a way to delete history, kind of like Maya. Um, or just delete your undo. Sometimes it can come in handy, I guess, if your computer's running low on memory, but like I almost never do it. Let's see, it's under. Edit. Yeah, edit del delete undo history. Yeah, you just click that, it'll get rid of all your undos. But for the most part, objects in ZBrush don't really have a history. Everything you do to them is just locked in as if you're deleting history at every moment. There are a few things that do keep history, such as the dynamic subdivision that can sort of be thought of as a history stack. The dynamic thickness, those are things that you can kind of like turn on and off without it being part of the undo. Which is nice. I'm really glad they added that in. I use that stuff all the time. Hey Fred the fish, thanks a lot. Okay, let's jump to something else. Let's jump to the eyeballs now. Just gonna put some extra detail into this. Let's get some color in there. Color those pupils black. Our eyes really that scratchy? These eyes are kind of based on this this concept art, and because Robert Crumb uses a cross-hatching style, it's very like his signature style. Figured I'd put that in the sculpt as well, which I wasn't sure if I'd like so much at the beginning, but it's turning out that I really like it. You know, it kind of gives a nice textural feel to it. It's definitely a non-realistic sculpting style, right? The character is very not realistic, so why not give it a non-realistic texture? So I think it really helps the style of the artwork come out. Got a question. Do I have some female body references? Not sure I understand the question. I've used female body references in the past when doing female body sculpts for sure. Usually just Google image search. So I've got this shirt here, and I want to give it some more subdivisions. I want to lock in some of this dynamic subdivision, but I've also got dynamic thickness on it. And if I click apply, that's going to lock in both the dynamic subdivision and the thickness, and I only want the subdivision. So in Ryan's tools, I have a button that's called Apply Dyne Subdivision. So that only applies the subdivisions without applying the thickness, which is really handy because then I can sculpt with all this extra subdivision without adding that thickness in. Yes, Ryan's tools is available. You can get that. I'll type that into the chat again. There's the link. Yeah, you got it, guys. Yeah, so it looks like this shirt's gonna take probably gonna take one more session. Only got a couple minutes left here. But yeah, definitely one more session to finish this up. Want to make the inside of the head, kind of make it make something inside there. You could 3D print this and turn it into a plant potter. Obviously, you couldn't have these flies floating in the air or that smoke floating in the air, but it'd be pretty cool as a little succulent pot planter or something. Or a coffee mug, of course. So how to make hands? Yeah, that's a good question. I started this hand. I just cut it off of a stock model. So ZBrush actually comes with a couple human figure models and some other stock models. So I use those a lot of times. So I just grabbed a hand and cut it off, and then of course posed it. Alright, I'm gonna get this shirt. We'll at least bend the elbow so we can have that that shirt and the hand coming together. So using Ryan's tools again to get that pivot point right in the center of the joint, so that when it bends, it just goes right where it's supposed to. So it's probably just going to be a little bit of maneuvering to get the sleeve lined up where the hand is. Not too bad, actually. That's pretty close. First try. Spam bots are getting it all in the last minute. All right, you guys. Thanks a lot for joining. Hopefully I'll be chattier next time. I get lost in the world of sculpting sometimes. Anyway, really enjoyed hanging out with y'all and looking forward to the next time. Have a great one. Bye.